Good morning to everyone, and welcome to our session today, Restorative Practices in the Co-requisite English Classroom. My name is Siobhan Bowen, and I'm a director with the WTCS office. And we're very excited to have Stephanie and Antonella here with us today as we kick off day 2 of our WTCS Faculty Summit. We do recognize that many of you are being very intentional with taking your time to be with us today, very busy people with schedules and things. And so our goal really is to make the most of our time together during this session. We also have some friends that are looking forward to viewing this session at a later time. So this is just a gentle reminder to everyone that today's session is being recorded. And before we get started, I'd like to ground us with our session expectations for today. Stephanie and Antonella have a lot of fascinating information that they will be sharing with us today. And so we encourage our listening community to be fully present in the room with us. Listen actively and make the space to allow those creative juices to flow. And we're hopeful this will set the stage for your curiosity to peek through a little bit, as we'd love to hear your thoughts and your questions as you engage with the material. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I would say share your thoughts and your questions as they come up in the chat so you don't forget them. And then we'll make sure to make some space for Stephanie and Antonella to address them at the end of the presentation. There's probably going to be, at least during the Q&A, right, opportunity for engagement during our time together. And so we ask that the group create a nice, healthy balance that allows all who are interested in engaging to be able to do so meaningfully with the content and with each other. And then just a couple of additional logistical items to cover. And I placed this first one in the chat as well. But if anyone is interested in captions, just click on those 3 dots at the top of the meeting, click on language and speech, and then turn on live captions. And if you do need more information on that, there is a Microsoft support link that I placed in the chat that can give you more information. At the end of the session, I'll be placing a link in the chat to an exit ticket. If any of you were with us on the Wednesday sessions, you might be familiar with this. It's a link that'll take you to our exit ticket that gives you a chance to provide some brief feedback, and then also to share one action step that you want to take based on the information shared today. So we'll get that to you at the end. Resources and recordings will be available on the WTCS Faculty Summit site, and I'll get that link in the chat for you in a moment. Our goal is to have those up within the week, so look out in your emails. We will email you once those resources are available to be accessed on the website. And I think that is all that I have. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie and Antonella. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Can everybody see the slides okay? And hear Antonella and me okay?
Yes. Hello, hello.
Yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody for joining, especially on a Friday morning. This is sacred time. So the fact that you're here is really wonderful. Thank you so much. My name is Stephanie. I use she or they pronouns, and I'm a full-time instructor at Madison College. And we're really excited to share with you some restorative practices in the co-requisite English classroom. I'd like my colleague to introduce herself really quickly.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually. My name is Antonella Papola. I am currently a teaching faculty member at UW-Madison, and I'm also an assistant for the Writing Across the Curriculum program at UW-Madison as well. And I just recently finished my PhD at UW-Madison in the School of Education.
All right, so I'm sure you've already seen the session overview, so I won't linger here too much, but the main topics that we're addressing today are linguistic justice and academic excellence, and how those two things coincide really well in a co-requisite English 1 class. I'll be speaking from my own experience as a teacher who teaches in this model, and Antonella will be speaking from her experience as a researcher who was immersed for a couple of semesters at Madison College in this and other models on campus. So to get things started today, oh, Angela, this is yours. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, we would
Yep.
love to, yeah, just we would like to get to know you a little bit more and know who's in the room. So if you don't mind, we would love you to drop a comment or unmute yourself and share who you are. And that might be your name, your pronouns, if you'd like, your role and institution. And we would also like you to share one word that captures the energy, intention, or hope you're bringing into the space today. So yeah,
And we
feel
have a
free
nice
to,
small group. So if people
yeah,
want to unmute, that would be wonderful.
checking the chat just in case. Katie, ADN nursing instructor at Lakeshore College. Welcome, Katie. Interested in learning.
I can go next. I'm Brianna Spiele. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also a nursing faculty at Southwest Tech down in Fenimore, Wisconsin. And I would say curiosity would be my word for this morning.
I'm Cami Ivy. I go by she. I am a nursing instructor also at Southwest Tech in advanced skills. And I am also curious, I guess, today. I'm not sure what to expect, so.
Hope we don't disappoint.
I see we've got Becky
welcome,
in the
Becky.
chat.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hopeful.
It's really interesting to have some health faculty here. And while our focus is definitely on the English classroom, if any of you are interested in connecting offline, Madison College used to have bridge programs, which was kind of a similar model, but it was really targeted to degree content areas. So that's another area. I think that this model is different, but there's a lot of overlaps. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'd love to chat more about that.
Anyone else would like to introduce yourselves?
Looks like Allie is typing.
Yes.
So we'll give just another moment. Flynn, welcome. If you would like to introduce yourself, you're welcome to unmute and do so. Otherwise, you're welcome to drop some information in the chat.
Hi, Ali.
The chat, I guess.
I didn't hear that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said I've just put it in the chat, I guess.
Oh. That's okay, Ali. Don't worry. Should I go ahead and get us started, Steph, or shall we wait? Oh, we have Flynn. Welcome, Flynn.
And I think we're ready to go. Yep.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and we are so excited to have you to share space with you. And yeah, so just briefly, how Stephanie and I came to our collaboration. We met back in 2023 when I was still a PhD student, and I was trying to figure out my research project, my dissertation project, and I have always had a very strong interest in open access colleges. I have studied those in my own home country, and I was born and grew up in Argentina, so I have spent some time studying open access colleges, and specifically was interested in how they establish literacy standards, specifically writing standards, and how they support students who don't meet those minimum benchmarks in reading and writing without risking inclusion. So that I knew that was sort of like my general interest, and I decided to explore how institutions and open access institutions in the U.S. were approaching that dilemma. And that's how I started learning about community colleges. And I was lucky enough to be welcome and received at Madison College to develop my research project. And I met Stephanie, who is doing significant equity work in her co-requisite English class. So I asked her if I could join her, and I was embedded in her class during the fall of 2023 as an embedded tutor. And I learned so many things about linguistic justice by observing her and working with her students. So this presentation is sort of like a result of our collaboration during the fall of 2023 and beyond. And we also wanted to offer some grounding concepts for our presentation. The main argument that we are trying to propose is that both linguistic justice and academic excellence are compatible, and that we can target and address both in any classes that we are teaching. There are a million definitions of linguistic justice. Our understanding of linguistic justice is broad and all-encompassing, because we recognize that the barriers and inequities that our students face as language learners and as language users in the world are complex and range from linguistic discrimination to material hardships that affect access to resources to develop a language, and also political conditions that impact their ability to express their cultures and languages confidently and proudly. So we believe that any definition of linguistic justice and approach to linguistic justice in higher education needs to address three domains relationally, and those domains are redistribution, recognition, and representation. So by redistribution, we understand that we can, in our classes, we can create opportunities to redistribute material resources that were previously denied to our students for language learners, and that can be opportunities to meet with you individually, opportunities, access to resources that that students access to materials and content that will help them succeed in your classes that perhaps they were not able to cover in their high school experience, and also material resources such as food in your class available for those students who might be experiencing material hardships. We also believe that redistribution should be combined with recognizing that our students' languages and cultures are equally valuable, and that all languages are linguistically equally. So that is something that is another angle of linguistic justice that we believe we should promote. And then in terms of representation, we believe that as instructors, we can always create opportunities to have our students' languages and cultures more represented in the readings that we are assigned or in the writing assignments that we are proposing. And for colleges more broadly, opportunities for increase the representation of marginalized populations in their faculty and academic staff. And we think that these multifaceted understanding of linguistic justice is compatible with academic excellence. There's not a universal definition of academic excellence. We understand this as simply setting high standards and high expectations for our students. Stephanie and myself are language educators, so this is an illustration of how we understand or how we promote academic rigor in our students' language development. So helping them or supporting them so that they can develop academic literacy, but that they also develop disciplinary literacy, research skills, and that they also working simultaneously on honing their information literacy skills, digital literacy skills, and other adult and professional literacy skills. So an example of how high standards can be set up in specifically English classes or writing classes at the community college level.
Thank you so much for the overview of those concepts. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking a bit about my teaching philosophy and practice in English 1+ at Madison College. I created a model. When I did that, I felt very fancy. This is something but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there's not any like one thing that educators do that is like the magic thing that is suddenly going to make students feel linguistically included in the classroom, or that's going to make them feel that they can achieve academic excellence. The other thing I wanted to acknowledge with this model is that some of what we do are choices that we make, and some of it is the context in which we function. And so I'll explain that all and break that down in a little bit more detail as we go. But as I was reflecting on who I am as a teacher and what I do in my classroom, the key concepts that came up were the co-requisite model itself, which is based on the Accelerated Learning Program, or ELP, culturally responsive pedagogy, embedded tutoring, community building, course-based undergraduate research experiences, delayed grading with self-assessment, and the students themselves. So I begin by acknowledging that so much of who I am as an educator and so much of what I'm able to do in the classroom depends on the context in which I exist. So first of all, the co-requisite model at Madison College is something that is one of the frameworks that that Madison College provides, and that they have built and localized to the Madison College population. So this is a national model that exists for anyone who's not familiar. And if you're looking at building this into your schools, there's obviously great models at Madison College, but there are a lot of other really great models nationwide. So I didn't invent the ELP program or the co-requisite model. I'm just lucky enough to get to teach in it. But because of that model, I'm able to do some really impactful justice work by supporting students who have been placed at a developmental level to achieve credit-bearing coursework sooner, more quickly in their process. For anybody who's not familiar with the ELP model, the way that it works is there's a credit-bearing course. So in this case, for me, it's English 1. And then there's a support course or a co-requisite course that's at the developmental education level, where students are working on building their college readiness skills, building their academic literacy skills, and depending on the content area, building whatever skills are going to be necessary for the discipline that they're entering into. In previous models at Madison College and probably other places, it would be that students would have a semester or even multiple semesters of developmental education coursework before they were able to enter into credit-bearing courses, which was detrimental to students who are trying to get into their programs as quickly as possible and trying to move forward. So this model, by pairing a developmental education course with a credit-bearing course, is accelerated and supportive for students to be able to move forward. The next piece that I want to mention is culturally responsive pedagogy. So again, I did not invent this. I was lucky enough in my undergraduate experience to be exposed to Gloria Lazen-Billings' work out of UW with culturally relevant pedagogy. But at Madison College, there is so much amazing work happening in terms of preparing faculty to work with diverse populations of students and to ensure the cultural relevance and cultural responsivity of our classrooms. I'm going to do a quick shout out to Siobhan, who's our facilitator today, who is one of the people who facilitated this professional development at Madison College when she was working with us there. And so while this is something that's important to me and is intrinsic to the way that I want to teach, my context not only allows me to think through this framework, but it actually encourages and empowers me to do that. Another piece that I'd like to mention is the embedded tutoring. So I can't assume what you all have access to at your schools, but at Madison College, we have an embedded tutoring program that's facilitated by the Writing Center. So Madison College students are trained as tutors to either work in the Writing Center or to be embedded tutors or writing fellows, where they attend class with the rest of the students, but they function as an embedded tutor. So that might look like they're working one-on-one with individual students. That might look like they're facilitating a small group discussion. Sometimes they might do a quick workshop in front of the whole class, helping them understand a particular topic that they're noticing that they're struggling with. And it also involves with meeting with students outside of class. So I have benefited as an instructor so much from this model, not only in terms of my students having access to amazing support, but also just from the ideas that I get from the writing fellows after all, they are students, so they're way more in touch with what students are after than I am as a person who's been removed from undergraduate student life for a really long time. And so the embedded tutoring has been really transformational for me. So I'd like to acknowledge these three pieces as extremely important to the work that I do, but these are things that I'm just lucky enough to exist in a context where these things are provided to me. On the bottom left corner, I have some other shout outs because I just think that getting to know the services at your institution and asking for what you need is so important. So I collaborate every semester with the Madison College Library, and for the projects that we did that I'm going to show you in a few minutes, they were instrumental in terms of helping my students build their information literacy skills, being able to use databases to find peer-reviewed and scholarly articles. The Institute for Equity and Transformational Change was extremely helpful. Not only did they help me as a researcher, but they also came and did workshops in my classroom to help my students understand equity-minded sense-making, so that as we were proceeding through the research projects that we did, the students were not looking at the data from a deficit mindset, but were looking at it with an equity mindset. Institutional research helped in terms of gathering data and presenting data to my students. They also came and did workshops on qualitative analysis, the basics of research. The grants office was really supportive just in terms of cheering us on. The School of Academic Advancement, which is my home school, was wonderful in terms of helping us come up with some of the topics that we did and also connecting us with research that they had done internally. And then lastly, Student Life in terms of helping us reach out to students. So I share all of this to say that lean into your institutions, see what they have to offer, and make use of everything that you can. So beyond the contextual stuff that has allowed me to do the work that I do, there are some intentional decisions that I make as an instructor when it comes to building my classroom. So the first one is community building. Even before I was teaching English 1 ELP, actually even before I was at Madison College and before I was even teaching English, in a past life, I was a French teacher, and I have done community building since the very beginning. And I think if nothing else I can accomplish in my classroom, I can build community with my students, amongst my students, and with the students to the institution as a whole. So one of the strategies I use, you can see the picture here on this slide, is the Manual for Developing Intercultural Competencies Story Circles. This is a program that's put together by UNESCO and co-sponsored by the World Council of Global and Intercultural Competence. I use story circles 4 times throughout the semester in my English 1 classroom. These are small group discussions. If you want to learn more, the manual is free, and I do have it linked at the end of the slides. Another strategy is restorative justice circles. And I'll admit that when I first thought about restorative justice, I always saw it as restoration from an individual or from an interpersonal issue. But the more that I've worked with restorative justice through the YWCA in Madison and also through other institutions that Madison College has partnered with, I've really learned that the foundation of restorative justice is actually community building. And when you're a part of a community and when you put your trust into that community and you want to continue to be a part of that community, there's less likely to be challenges that come up. And when they do come up, we already have the skills and tools to be able to rebuild afterward. So I use restorative justice community building circles twice throughout the semester, on the first day and on the last day of the semester. And as needed, if there are any interpersonal things that do come up, whether between the student and me or between students, I will use restorative practices to keep our community, our classroom community, going strong. So one of the main pieces of my work has been undergraduate research, and in fact, course-based undergraduate research experiences. I became passionate about this type of program as a PhD student, realizing that I did not know how to do research until I was doing my dissertation. I somehow had gone to an R1 school for undergrad and didn't learn to research, and had done a master's degree and didn't learn how to do research, and found myself like really struggling to do my dissertation. And here I am, I'm almost kicked out of my program 7 years in, because it's not easy. And I realized that I had no idea when I was an undergraduate to partner with a teacher, to look for a lab that I could work in, to try to get that sort of campus employment. And most of our students at a technical college don't have the time to get a job on campus working in a lab, or most of our technical institutions don't even have research opportunities on campus. So by embedding undergraduate research experiences into the classroom, students are able to leave as research assistants. Like I actually have them put on their resumes that they are research assistants in the lab that I developed, because they have for a whole semester contributed to a research project every single step of the way. And some of our students will never touch research again, and that's okay. At least now they know if it's something that they're interested in and they want to move forward with it, they can seek out those opportunities. And even if they don't, they have better critical thinking skills, better information literacy skills, and better interpersonal skills as a result of it. If you're looking for places to get more information, the Council on Undergraduate Research is a great resource. And lastly, delayed grading with self-assessment. So delayed grading isn't just this time of semester where I'm weeks behind on grading. It's an actual pedagogical choice to give students feedback on their work without a grade. So basically you present students with their feedback. And for me, I do that in a video format and also in annotations on their document. And then I have the students go through a delayed grading process where they tell me what stood out about the feedback. They tell me what questions they have about the feedback, and then they use the rubric for the assignment to assess themselves. And I do this because students often just look at a grade and boom, I got an A, I'm perfect, I have nothing to learn. All done. Or they see a lower grade than they expected and they're like, I'm worthless, I'm horrible, I can't do this. So by giving them the feedback, it gives them something to think about, but it doesn't put a label on them or it doesn't put a value on their work. It just is feedback. It's just one person in the whole world's opinion about what they did. And so with this model, students have a lot more ability to guide their own learning and to take away from the feedback what's important to them. And also it decreases the stress and anxiety about grading, and it increases the trust that students can succeed in the classroom. So these are some of the decisions that I make when it comes to how I build my classroom. And then lastly, the students themselves. For me, students are the center of the classroom. They're the center of my work. They're the center of the institutions. And so I do everything possible to try to keep my students at the forefront of the decisions that I make. So whenever possible, what are their goals for the assignment? What are their goals for their learning? What are the choices that they want to make about how they approach this activity or how they move through their work? And how can I center their voices as much as possible? So these are some of the philosophical and practical elements of my teaching approach. So you're probably wondering, like, well, what about the research? So my students did 2 different research projects, 2 course embedded undergraduate research projects. The first one was looking at the barriers from developmental education to degree credit coursework. We partnered with the School of Academic Advancement on this, and we were able to do a qualitative survey to understand the barriers that prevented students from transitioning to credit-bearing coursework. Another project that we did was in partnership with Student Life. This was a photo voice study of sense of belonging on campus, where we were trying to understand what are the elements of the campus experience or the college experience that give students a sense of belonging, and how can we amplify those things while downplaying the aspects that make them feel like they don't belong. So in sum, my students and I have been able to do rigorous primary research. We've been able to engage in service learning and create new knowledge that the college and the college community can benefit from. We've been able to leverage their racial, cultural, linguistic, and ability diversities to strengthen our projects. I've been able to center the student needs in my classes, but also centering the student needs more broadly around campus through this research. I've been able to collaborate with a variety of support services on campus. And all of this, I was able to meet English 1 course outcomes, even though a lot of this is not part of the course outcomes. You can always sort of like find ways to address the outcomes through this kind of project. We presented at a national conference. We've presented at a variety of campus events. And I would say we've exceeded expectations for undergraduate students, given that most undergraduate students don't do primary research. And in particular, students who are labeled developmental education almost never get to have these kinds of opportunities. Students and I have been able to gain transferable skills, and we've been able to restore self-efficacy, access, autonomy, and voice. So that's a little bit about my classroom and my students. like to pass it over to Antonella.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm always in awe with your teaching. As you know, I'm a huge fan, and I just wanted to share with you some examples of the things that I've learned from Stephanie's class and from my interviews and conversations with students. As I said before, I was in my dissertation, I was interested in studying institutional and pedagogical approaches to support college readiness in writing at Madison College. So what I did very broadly was to compare prerequisite and co-requisite English sections. And as we said before, one of the things that I've learned and that we're proposing in this session is that linguistic justice and academic excellence or academic rigor or academic growth, however you want to call it or define it in your class, are compatible and desirable goals for community college students. And Steph, if you wouldn't mind advancing to the next slide, I just wanted to bring some pieces of my data to illustrate why we think that linguistic justice is important. And one of the things that I've learned in my dissertation is that for linguistic minorities or multilingual students, which are the students I mostly focused on, their ability to secure and achieve college readiness was significantly impacted by circumstances that were mostly outside of their control. And those circumstances were both material, political, and ideological, and they were inseparable from each other. So this is an example of Daniela, who was one student enrolled in Stephanie's co-requisite English class, just to illustrate the nature of the barriers that our multilingual students face and learn how to support them from learning about those barriers. So Daniela, who aspires to become a speech pathologist, had migrated from Cuba at a very young age. So initially when she came into the United States by herself, she faced the language and cultural barriers that many immigrant students face in the United States. But that was only one part of the difficulties that she faced. She was also facing housing insecurity and also financial hardships that prevented her from finishing her studies, which she was also, as she was enrolling in high school, she was also facing barriers with the language, right? So but because she was facing housing insecurity and financial hardships, she had to drop out of high school and take 2 to 3 jobs to support herself, right? And that required her to complete high school and learn English through alternative pathways. So her whole educational journey was interrupted by circumstances that were outside of her control, that involved economic and also political complexities of the current times that our students are living with. So this is an example of how these multiple barriers are affecting our students' education and language learning journeys. And then, Steph, if you can advance the next slide. Again, I was focusing on multilingual students, and I wanted to acknowledge that our multilingual students are a diverse community, and there are various levels of multilingualism and experiences and language backgrounds within our multilingual community. So the kinds of barriers that affected the college readiness of multilingual students were not exclusive to those students who had studied outside of the United States or immigrated to the United States at a young age, but also students who were born and grew up in the United States in bilingual households. And this is an example of this is an example of a conversation I had with Ellie, who is a 25-year-old Asian American student, also enrolled in a co-requisite English class. So this quote does not illustrate the financial and material hardships that Ellie had faced, which had forced her to drop out of college. And she had just rejoined Madison College when I met her. So those barriers are not pictured here, but what I wanted to share with this quote is how our multilingual students are often facing linguistic discrimination on top of those financial and material hardships that are affecting their language learning. So in the case of Ellie, she shared how she would constantly encounter what the literature terms racial linguistic ideologies, but beyond this fancy or complex term, we can think about linguistic plainly linguistic discrimination or assumptions made about the quality of her English based on ideas about race and hierarchical an understanding of race in hierarchical terms. So Ellie was sharing broadly how she's often stereotyped and stigmatized as having broken English because she's perceived as non-mainstream or not belonging to the dominant racial culture. So this is an example of the kinds of injustices that our students face, and that we believe with Stephanie that any college class, but specifically in community colleges, given the nature of the student population that they serve, signal the kind of responsibility for linguistic justice that we encourage everyone to assume. And this is an example of how linguistic justice can be promoted, specifically in a co-requisite English class. So these examples come from Stephanie's class, which again I joined as an embedded tutor. As Stephanie has just shared, this was a research-based undergraduate class. So students were working collectively on a research project around the topic of sense of belonging. So this was already a very challenging exercise and an example of how Stephanie was trying to promote academic excellence and academic rigor. So students were learning how to conduct research, how to not only conduct research, but write about research, right? And that required them to adopt a specific academic voice and a specific formal register and write. They practice how to communicate their ideas concisely and how to write to a specific audience. So different kinds of they were engaged in a very academically rigorous writing practices, but given the significant linguistic diversity that was involved in and that was part of Stephanie's class, that linguistic diversity could have gone overlooked, but Stephanie made the pedagogical decision to use it as an instrument for the research process, right, and to leverage for the research project. So in addition to all these very complex academic tasks that students were doing, they were also invited to develop recruitment materials in languages other than English, so languages that were represented in the class. So they were not merely translating the recruitment materials, but they were developing in additional languages. So I framed this in my dissertation as an example of not only recognition, because Stephanie was recognizing that languages other than English can have an equal value as English for educational purposes, but also participatory parity, because those languages were not being recognized only in celebratory terms, but specifically instrumentalized for research purposes. So these are just examples of how we worked how those materials were developed in English, in Spanish, in French, in Thai, which were the 4 languages that were represented in Stephanie's class. And this was an opportunity not only to, again, learn how to conduct research and how to write about research, but it was also an opportunity to learn about languages other than English, because as students were working in small language groups, they were also those language groups were formed by students who knew that specific language, and also students who were interested in that particular language, and that they were, by participating in that group, they were learning something about Spanish or something about French that maybe sparked their curiosity for that language. So there was also an opportunity to learn about other languages as part of these multilingual and translingual activity that Stephanie proposed. And my final slide, also an example of how linguistic justice can be promoted in your classes, and how it was specifically promoted at Madison College from in my research experience. I observed how students really leveraged relationships and not only form but maintain ongoing relationships with their teachers. And I describe this as a form of educational social capital, because those relationships were opportunities for them to harness resources, educational resources that have been previously denied to them, right? Like the opportunity to spend more time with a teacher working on a reading that was particularly complex, or working on a writing assignment, right? Time that they did not have in their previous educational experience. They were gaining those resources by connecting to teachers. And it was not only those resources that were now available to them, but also the fact that students tended to gravitate to those teachers who were open to linguistic diversity. In some cases, those teachers were also multilingual or bilingual, or had some experience learning a language, so that those that multilingual and multicultural openness of teacher was also very important for them, and was interpreted, and I interpreted this as an opportunity to redistribute those resources that support our students, language learners, and that were not available in previous educational experiences. And yeah, as sort of like a summary of the things that we were trying to emphasize, things that you can do in your classes, regardless of the topic that you're teaching, or in the context of your own class, things that you can do to address these different domains of linguistic justice relationally and at different levels, building supportive peer relationships, having individual meetings, or at least individual interactions with your students. They benefit a lot from that individual time. Getting to know your students' backgrounds, languages, and experiences, as Stephanie shared before, and as she will share with you she will share with you a link to the language surveys that she uses at the beginning of her classes. Going further, getting to know what students want, their strengths and their goals. Share content and resources in multiple languages from multiple perspectives and representing multiple cultures. Believing in your students, having high expectations, encouraging them, and providing various pathways, scaffolds, and resources to meet them where they are, but also helping them to reach the specific goals that you set for your class. And I think that go ahead.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while. Thank you all for listening. And I forgot to acknowledge this before, like the way that I'm teaching now is not a representation of like one day or 1 week or one workshop. It's a representation of 20 years of like layering and building. So the aim of the project or the presentation today is not for you to say, okay, I'm going to like take all of this and implement it next semester or something like that. But the hope is that you can find bits and pieces along the way that jump out at you as something like, oh, I want to follow up on that, or I'm hoping to learn more about this, or maybe I'll research that. So we would love to hear from you if you want to unmute and discuss, or if you want to put in the chat. What is something that you can do to infuse linguistic justice for academic excellence in your contexts? So I'd like to open the floor up to any of you to share what's on your mind. And if you'd like to share, you can just unmute, or if you want to raise your hand, that also works if we have multiple people. I'm not seeing anybody looking like they're writing in the chat. So I'll do a last call in case anybody would like to share something that you would like to do or like to try to infuse linguistic justice for academic excellence in your classes.
the idea of giving feedback on assignments first. I've definitely graded things and they don't even want to take another look at it because it was so overwhelming for them. But seeing what they need to fix going forward is a good idea. And I'm kind of doing that with EKG rhythm strips, like hand this in so you can get feedback on it and improve what you're going to do on the exam. So more of
Absolutely.
that infusing in.
Absolutely. The article that kind of prompted that strategy is linked in the references at the end. And I also have an example of the delayed grading survey later on in the slides if you want to see sort of how I approach that. And obviously it's set up for an English classroom, but given your healthcare background, you can certainly customize it. You could make it shorter, you could make it longer to meet your individual needs. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, Cami, and I also wanted to say that I think that that can be really impactful. And in my conversations with students, I've learned that they don't often get feedback when they are in middle school and high school, and also the intensity and complexity of the writing assignments is not as rigorous as the college level. So any opportunity that they have to get feedback from you will be super helpful for them to hone in those writing skills.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share something that you're interested in exploring or trying related to linguistic justice and academic excellence? Siobhan, I see your comment. Thank you. If there aren't any other ideas, we would like to transition to some questions. So, and if you were still formulating ideas that you have, feel free to jump in with those here. But we would love to answer any questions either about Antonella's research or her research approach, or about my classroom or interactions with students. We're here and happy to share. So please unmute or put a question in the chat, and we would gladly address them. Allie, go for it. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for this. This is a great presentation. I have been wanting to do delayed grading for a little while, but I always hesitate because I teach a lot of online classes. And so, you know, I don't know. Do you have any ideas of how to implement that into online sections, especially for like people who are, you know, a lot of them are older students who have full-time jobs, and it's like they want their grades, they want to move on with their lives. And so I struggle like sort of making it practical for the students while also like building in that growth mindset. So I was wondering if you had any ideas for like particularly asynchronous online classes.
Yeah, thank you. I actually, part of the reason that I even do this is because of teaching online. So at a past school, I taught 50% of my teaching was in person on campus, and the other 50% was online asynchronous. And the students who had me in the classroom, their course feedback would be like, very helpful, detailed feedback, love the class, very, very helpful, whatever. And the online students would be like picky, cruel, mean, overwhelming. I mean, they really, the feedback I would give them on their assignments, like in the form of just annotations, felt too much for them because they didn't have the context. They couldn't hear the tone in my voice. They didn't know that I was coming from a place of care and trying to support them rather than like criticize and tear them down. So that's when I actually implemented video feedback. So I will have their paper up on the screen, and I'll do like a screen recording where I'm talking through it so they can hear my voice, and so that they can hear that I'm not criticizing, but I'm like questioning, or I'm, commenting, or I'm like, just processing. And I think that that's really helpful for the students to feel the support rather than the harshness that can come across sometimes from just annotations. And even if you, I know that can be a lot, like it does take me between 20 to 30 minutes per paper to do that, which I realize is not realistic in a lot of contexts. But what you can do, especially I know you're at Madison College with Brightspace, they have a little built-in recording now. You can't do a screen capture with that, but you could do some annotations in the document, and you could still do like a 1 minute or 2 minute video where the students can still hear your voice and get that sort of like positive vibe from you, so that they're not feeling that harshness or that criticism. And in terms of the time, I have had a couple of students who are like, "Oh my God, can you just give me the grade?" And I hear them, but I also am like, it's easy to not want to do the hard work of critical thinking, but I want them to think critically, and I want them to be able to reflect on their writing in a critical way, not in a like criticizing way, but from a like a thought provoking way. So, I guess I don't do it for every single assignment. Like I have like weekly homeworks and stuff. I only do it for major papers. So for like weekly assignments, it's just like you did it, you get points, move on. So I save it up so that like it's not every single thing. So it's not as much for me and it's not as much for them, but it's on those really critical pieces throughout the semester where they're going to see the most growth. And I also allow them to do a rewrite. So there is a points benefit for getting to be able to, to do that process. And I see that you commented you've had that experience too. All right. Any other questions? I think we're getting close to the end of our time, but if there's any other questions, we're happy to answer. And I see that Siobhan has put in the exit ticket, so please do fill that out. We'd love to hear feedback. So in the slides, we do have our contact information if you'd like to reach out to either of us. Here are some links and QR codes. This is the welcome survey I use where I gather information about students, preferences, identities, things like that. The delayed grading form is here if you want to take a look at how I do that. And then here's a writer's narrative assignment that I do at the beginning of the semester to get to know students. And then we've got resources here to a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. So please check any of that out that you'd like.
Oh, where's the PowerPoint available?
I did drop it in the chat before, but I also believe WTCS is going to be consolidating all of the slides and sharing them. I can drop it in the chat again.
Yep. I was just getting ready to share that. We'll have, I mentioned in the beginning, and you might have missed it, but our resources for all of our sessions, along with the session videos, will be placed on the WTCS Faculty Summit website. So we'll email all participants as soon as all of those resources are available for you to access.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you to Stephanie and Antonella for a wonderful presentation. We're so happy you could join us and be able to provide this information to our faculty across the system. If you all have any questions, let me know. I did drop the link to the exit ticket in the chat for you to access as well. Otherwise, wishing you all a great rest of your morning and enjoy the rest of the Faculty Summit.